Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back with another episode of Rudy's Common Sense. And today, common sense is really necessary because we're going to talk about the Biden mandates. We're going to talk about the legality of them. We're going to talk about the scientific basis for them. And we're going to try to get you some guidance on this because I think everybody is terribly confused. And to help us through this, I have with me Dr. Maria Ryan, who is a nurse practitioner, a PhD in hospital administration. She spent a decade running a hospital, which she saved, and for a number of years was voted the #1 rural hospital CEO in the country. And from the very beginning, she's been on top of this pandemic. In fact, she was the first one to interview the person from China who revealed all of the problems with the Wuhan lab, the very first. And she's way ahead of everyone on that, as well as many other things regarding the pandemic. So her view on this will be extraordinarily helpful. Dr. Ryan?
Good morning.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a complicated subject and one that we have to take our time to look at because there's been so much misinformation and so much censoring of board-certified providers who have specialties in immunology, but because their voice, their expertise is against the mainstream taglines, a lot of people don't know the facts.
Well, in this country, before we get to the science and the law, the strict law, in this country, generally we proceed by persuasion.
Correct.
A president doesn't dictate, a president doesn't mandate, a president doesn't order. That's what happens in a dictatorship.
Right.
A president persuades. A president convinces. A president sells his ideas to the American people. And in this case, somewhere around 25, 30% of the American people seem resistant to take the vaccine. And the president isn't trying to persuade them any longer. He's now moved into this national mandate in which if they're in a business of over 100 and they don't do it, they can get fired.
There may be times at which mandates are appropriate. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now, but this one isn't. And it's because of the science. He is a president. His background is politics. He's been in political life for, 4 decades. So he is not a provider. He's not a person who works with patients. And because of his rhetoric, he tries to silence those people who are experts. A doctor isn't a doctor isn't a doctor, just like a nurse isn't a nurse isn't a nurse. Everybody's got different specialties. My background in emergency medicine, you need to know a little bit about everything because you're the provider. They are taking care of people from all walks of life. No matter what they come in with, you have to treat them. And Dr. Stephen Templeton is an expert, and he is out of the University of Indiana. And he feels that this is so politicized, voices like his, who's an expert, get censored. He says lockdowns, school closures, all these mandates in response to COVID-19 are very self-destructive and are more politicized than scientific. And he's also worked for the CDC in the past. So he knows his stuff. He knows lockdowns don't work. We've seen it in places that had lockdowns. The spread of COVID was just the same. He said prior to 2020, we had lots of research on, say, masks. And we knew cloth masks don't do much. But it's like post-COVID, all of a sudden cloth masks are promoted. So there was science pre-COVID, and then there was fake science post-COVID.
So what you're saying is that the cloth mask is not effective.
It really isn't effective in stopping the spread or getting it or stopping it from you getting it.
And this information really hasn't been disclosed to the American people. I mean, I've seen the studies, right?
Correct.
And most of the studies are in Europe.
Yeah, we've had our own studies here in the United States.
These cloth masks are either harmful or marginally helpful.
Yeah.
But they don't
Surgical masks are much better. But cloth masks, bandanas, they're saying whatever you can put over your mouth, it's just a farce. It's not going to protect you against anything.
So he gave a speech expressing that frustration, and then he got OSHA to do this regulation that is right now stayed by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals as being illegal. And it says, if you're in a business of 100 or more, you have to be vaccinated, or you got to be tested every day, every week, whatever. And if not, then you're heavily penalized, and you got to pay all kinds of money, and or you got to fire the employee. Now, in order to justify that, there would have to be very, very strong scientific evidence that says that this is absolutely necessary to stop a grave danger to the American people.
Grave danger, important verbiage.
So is this a grave, or if we don't do this, are many, many people going to die?
No. We have to talk about natural immunity then.
Right, of course, which somehow is, number one, ignored.
I don't know why.
And number two, no statistics. I can't get anybody to tell me, do we have a rough estimate of how many people
we do
are naturally immune? We
do. And it is a rough estimate because I was a CEO at the beginning of this pandemic. And in the beginning of this, we didn't have a lot of testing materials. So if somebody had signs and symptoms of COVID-19, we told them to go home, drink plenty of fluids, take Motrin or Tylenol for their body aches, and isolate. So we didn't test them. So these numbers are very conservative. So for confirmed cases in the United States, we know there's 47 million people who tested positive for COVID. So therefore, they have natural immunity.
Is it 100% that everyone who gets COVID acquires immunity, or is there a slippage of some kind?
You know, most likely it's pretty much near 100%. Could someone have a very weak response to it? Yes, of course. But I'm being very conservative that it's 47 million people in the United States. Globally, there's 257 million people. And again, there's a lot of countries that once we got testing up in the United States, other countries lagged behind. So we know these numbers are very conservative. But natural immunity is much stronger than the immune response by a vaccine.
Now that's a debatable fact. Right?
No, it's a scientific fact.
But I mean, there are people, I've seen the study in Israel. So the one in Israel is very, very definitive. It says that if you have natural immunity, you're anywhere from 7 to 20 times more likely to, number one, not get the disease again. I think you're 7 times or 8 times more likely to not get it, and you're 20 times more likely not to die of it. And then that's replicated in several other studies in other countries. Have they done a study in the United States, or are they just avoiding it?
Yes, we have about 15 academic studies that show that natural immunity offers much more protection than the COVID-19 vaccine. In that Israel study, it's really fascinating because it's just the opposite, that vaccinated people have 27 times more likely to get symptomatic COVID than their counterparts who got COVID naturally and have natural immune response. There's some theories why. I know this is a time-limited podcast, but if you get COVID you get an immune response in your lungs, because this is a respiratory infection, it's much more specific and your immune response is different than getting it through vaccination. Hey, we all had real high hopes with the vaccine. At first, we thought it was going to be 90% effective. We didn't know a lot about them. The mRNA technology is so new. We need longitudinal studies on that, and we need longitudinal studies on natural immunity. But now it's like less than 50% effective.
Now that's true of the Pfizer.
Yep, the mRNA ones, Pfizer and Moderna.
But is that? I mean, I saw that article in Epic Times and a few other places, and it says that it's only like 47. Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine effectiveness falls below 50% after 5 months study. 47% effectiveness after 5 months. So 53%, it's not effective. And this was particularly as against the Delta variant.
The Delta variant.
Now, this is a good time to take a short break. I accomplished a lot in 2020, exposing the truth, establishing the relationship with you, working tirelessly for America. And I came to know the work and value of the people at American Hartford Gold. You see, you buy gold not only for what you know, but you buy gold for what you don't know. American Hartford Gold is the company you can trust when it comes to buying gold. They sell physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside of your IRA. In the precious metals industry, they are the highest rated firm in our country with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. Give them a call and tell them Rudy sent you. And be sure to ask them what I bought. And if you call them right now, they will give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. Folks, these are uncertain times. The one thing you can count on to protect what you have worked so hard for is physical gold and silver. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 833-GOLD-777. That's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Again, that's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Let's go on with our discussion.
Moderna and Pfizer use the mRNA technology. This is a really important fact. So a lot of providers are very concerned about the politicization of CDC and whether we can trust CDC research and CDC information. But CDC's own research said that vaccinated people carry as much viral load if they were to get COVID as unvaccinated. So it proves that there's very little difference if you do get COVID between the vaccinated and unvaccinated.
I don't think people understand that because I don't.
Okay.
So if you get vaccinated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I read
Mm-hmm.
as a layman is that there's less of a chance that you'll get the disease. And if you do get the disease, it will not be as harmful and it won't be fatal. Now, the statistics that we just looked at on Pfizer say that if you get the vaccine, you have just as good a chance of getting it as you don't. In fact, you have a slightly greater chance of getting it. Only 47% effective. What about in terms of the severity of it and fatality?
The hope with the vaccines all along was that it would decrease the chance of you going into the hospital. So we knew that there was a potential you could still get COVID, but we wanted to prevent hospitalizations and obviously prevent deaths. Now, the vaccines is a very complicated story. And again, we're not confident in the data and what's being told to us. So I wish social media wouldn't censor these great doctors like Dr. Peter McAuliffe. He's an expert in immunology. He's got 650 peer-reviewed articles. I don't know this man personally, but I definitely have read his research throughout the years. And he is being censored because he's looking at the science. And he says we're not following the science. If you look at the VAERS data, VAERS...
Tell us what VAERS are the fatality.
No, VAERS stands for Vaccination adverse event reaction sheet.
And this is something that really, when you do these trials, you've got to do this. You have to.
It's not just trials.
And
so,
then even when it becomes
say I give my child a chickenpox vaccine and my child gets a reaction, I could voluntarily report the reaction to the CDC through this VAERS report,
right,
or my provider could. So it's a volunteer system. So already it's a little flawed, but I'm not beating up on that. It's just, you've got to know in the back of your mind, because it's voluntarily.
This is a report you make if something goes wrong.
Yes. We do like providers, if there's a death related to a drug or a vaccine, shouldn't be voluntary. You need to report that.
Right.
So you fill out forms and you say this is the...
So what does it show?
Right now, it shows that there were 16,000 reported deaths related to the vaccine that providers filled out forms or family members. The CDC right now is saying they cannot definitively say there's a causal link between the vaccine and the deaths, but a lot of people want an independent group of specialists to look at that data, and they define it.
CDC usually fight with that information? In other words, somebody, a doctor or a patient, has put in a report saying the vaccine caused my death.
Correct.
So suppose it was a new medicine. The new medicine caused my death.
Yeah.
Does the CDC not accept that until they do a separate investigation?
Yes, you got to look at all the facts, but you hope the provider already did that. Say somebody did start on a new medicine, but they got in a car accident and they died from their traumatic injuries. Well, you don't think it's the medicine. So you hope the doctor already weeded out those things that...
Well, what I'm getting at is when they suspend a medicine or they put a label on it, or do they actually go and examine all these things, or does the fact that you get so many lead you to put a warning on and then check it out?
It should lead you to really question why there's so many reported cases. 16,000, 24,000 reported cases of permanent disability from the vaccine. So the 16,000 where either a doctor or a patient, or their family,
said they died of the vaccine.
They got the vaccine. A month later, they're dead. And we've seen news articles.
Yes.
But are there 16,000 of them is the question.
This is a good time to take a short break. How much equity do you have in your home? 50,000? 100,000? More? Cybercrime experts are alerting homeowners that the more equity you have, the greater the chance foreign and domestic criminals will come after you. Title theft is one of the fastest growing crimes. Home Title Lock, America's leader in home title protection, is alerting homeowners they could already be a victim and not know it. Here's how it goes down. First, cyber thieves search hundreds of public databases for high equity homes. Next, they pull your home's title that's online. They forge your signature stating you sold your home, and they take out loans using your equity. You're not covered by insurance, your bank, or common identity theft programs. Protect your most valuable asset. Register your address now to see if you're already a victim and receive a complete title history of your home. A $100 value free. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. That's HomeTitleLock.com. Thank you for coming back. Okay. And then there are 24,000 where the person has been very seriously impaired.
Yeah, there's a lot of neurological concerns with people having adverse side effects.
Yes, there are millions who have gotten it.
Correct. So you've got to look at the totality. But let me give you an example of something.
Let's apply it to a different situation.
Okay.
Any other medicine.
Yeah.
Would this be numbers that would be of concern?
Absolutely, 100%.
Even with that many?
Yes. You will remember in 1976, somewhere around there, we had the swine flu.
Oh, sure.
So Gerald Ford was our president at the time. He got vaccinated. There were 5 deaths. 5 deaths. And 25 to 50 cases of what's called Guillain-Barré syndrome.
I remember that now.
A neurological problem. They stopped the program. Stopped it. just
But this
with the
affected
5
far
deaths.
fewer people. I mean, much smaller number of people.
Right. So after 5 deaths, they stopped the program.
Right.
We're saying as of January, vaccines had just come out in the beginning of, 21. And there was already in January of 2021, already 182 deaths related to it. So I don't have the answers, but it's going to take some serious and honest looking into the vaccines and the effects of the vaccines. I certainly still at this point think anybody who's vulnerable, those above 65 years old, should really consider it. And they need to work with their doctor and look at the totality of it. Certainly, young people do not need this vaccine, especially children.
Children meaning below the age of 18?
Oh, yeah, that's the classic definition of children. But I think most adults do not need the vaccine.
That, of course, is contrary to what is the accepted I'm going to say propaganda, but the accepted version of the establishment.
Because we're not following the science. This is the first time in my career that things like science, vaccines, serious issues are being politicized, and has a lot of people, great providers, Dr. Peter McCullough. I could go on with many, many names of people who are highly regarded, who says, the Biden administration, the Dr. Fauci's of the world are not following science, which leads, so that now there's a void. And now people are suspect. Conspiracy theories come in because we didn't allow all voices to debate it. Like I said, a doctor isn't a doctor isn't a doctor. We all have different specialties and we all can see things a little bit different. To get to the best end product, you need diverse thoughts.
There does seem to be a concerted, let's call it establishment effort, to try to not give the public any information that would make them hesitate to take the vaccine. So that, for example,
I'll tell you another good
if
example.
you go on Twitter or Instagram, I don't remember, and someone were to post something negative, they immediately refer you to CDC, big long thing explaining how
no one should be on Twitter.
how safe the vaccine is.
Right. Well, it's even about treatment, right? We all remember with hydroxychloroquine, only in the United States was thought of as bad. And Dr. Peter McCullough was like, since when do we not treat our patients? There's been many studies on hydroxychloroquine to show its effectiveness if given early in the treatment for COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like 250 to 1.
Yeah.
That hydroxychloroquine is effective at the early stage, and it's something like 60 to 1 that ivermectin is.
Yeah.
I got both.
Yeah. And for some reason, if somebody, whether they're vaccinated or not, starts getting serious COVID, we have great treatments. They should immediately ask for monoclonal antibodies to be administered to them. That is a great treatment and it can save your life.
I also got that.
And you also got that.
And so did the president.
Yeah.
And I got it because of the president's intervention, I should say. But I mean, the reality is, and this is what frustrates me, because these facts are not given to people, that for children, there are about 8 other things before you get to COVID, maybe 12, that are more likely to kill them.
Yeah. Children, thank the Lord, are kind of protected overall from COVID. If they get it, they tend to be mild cases, and they don't get the viral loads, and they don't tend to transmit it to a lot of people. So we're blessed in that regard that children are not affected by this. Whereas we've had other pandemics in the past and other influenza outbreaks that severely affected our children. COVID is not one of those things. And we don't know enough about the mRNA technology. It was new. Everybody was doing the best they could, but we should really, really limit it for anybody under 40 years of age, unless they're immunocompromised and you work with your doctor on it.
If you don't mind, doctor, we're going to take a brief pause. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to mypillow.com right now and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code RUDY for these great specials. That's mypillow.com and use the promo code RUDY. Thank you for coming back. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is probably a pro-vaccine organization, I would think, right?
They should be pro-science,
But
but,
I mean,
yeah,
But let's be,
for this, it seems like
CDC
yes.
is pro-vaccine,
Yep.
NIH is pro-vaccine,
Yep.
the president is obsessively pro-vaccine.
And obsessively masked when it's convenient for him.
I mean, it's the most absurd thing in the world. But doesn't that make his ability to persuade almost non-existent? He does things that are just absurd, like he wears a mask before he comes out,
Yeah.
when he's not around anyone. Then he comes out and he takes the mask off and he hugs someone.
Yeah. It's a show. It's to
But
defraud
doesn't
and confuse the American public.
Doesn't he realize that this is going to lead to the American people just not believing?
That's the problem. That's the problem with this being politicized. It's left people skeptical. Look at outside, we don't pass, there's not one documented case of anybody passing COVID from being outside. But yet I see people outside with a mask on.
Right.
Why?
And there
Because
are doctors.
the mainstream media, the president of the United States, people, I don't know what the game is, but they try to scare people.
Well, they wear the mask outside and then they go to a ball or a political function and they don't have the mask on.
Yeah. If
And of course,
anything,
if you're going to wear the mask at all,
yeah, you should use
might-
it indoors
in close
proximity, and it should be a surgical mask.
And when you're far away, you don't need to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And I think this comes about because at some point, a month or two into this pandemic, it became completely political.
Yeah.
It became take Trump out.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is Rudy Giuliani's theory, but I remember when the president sent the ship here to help Cuomo and de Blasio, and Governor Cuomo and Governor Newsom, possibly even Murphy, had written articles praising President Trump for how cooperative he had been.
Yeah.
And,
He didn't want this pandemic.
but then within a day, it all changed to starting to blame him for the same things they were praising him for.
Yeah.
And I knew, just being in politics, that somebody called them and said, if you don't stop this, you're going to reelect him.
Isn't that crazy? That's sinful.
But that's what happened. It became entirely politicized.
Yeah.
I mean, I went through the hydroxychloroquine because I know Dr. Zelensky really well. And I had friends whose lives were saved with hydroxychloroquine, which means to me, all of the propaganda about not using has to have killed many people. I mean, a lot of people died because of the Washington Post and
That's right.
telling you that hydroxychloroquine was dangerous. We've been using it for 50 years. Whether it can cure or alleviate COVID or not is one question.
Yeah,
the fact that it's dangerous is absurd.
Nothing really cures most viruses. Common cold, we don't cure it. Influenza, we don't really cure it once we have it, but there's things to alleviate the symptoms. Vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc. You see the Zicam. I'm not a paid sponsor for Zicam, but it does really work to help alleviate some of the symptoms.
And it's worked for most people.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, it's worked 90% more of the times. But the part of this that really is about as provable as you can get and makes this whole thing seem very, very suspicious is only 0 to 0.103% of childhood COVID cases die. Children.
Yeah. It's less than the annual
influenza.
Flu. Yep.
It's children.
Yep.
Influenza, heart disease, accidents,
yep.
gunshot injuries are all much more deadly than COVID up to the age of about 18. Under 18, in this year, first 9 months, more people died in vehicle crashes than COVID. How about 6 times more? Mm-hmm. Died in vehicle crashes than COVID, which means we shouldn't allow children to cross the street. Right? We're going to save 6 times more children by not allowing them to cross the street than by putting stupid masks on them in school.
Again, we didn't follow the science. You know, we hear a lot of chatter about this thought because people have watched Bill Gates videos. I've never seen not one of them, but allegedly he talks about having infertility through vaccines to save the planet. Well, a lot of people are starting to believe that because there's a lot of talk about a large amount of miscarriages when they get the vaccine in pregnancy. I don't know if that's true or not, but because we haven't been following the science and people are so suspicious, is this true? Is it not? Is there any data? Are they hiding data? This is why non-transparency and politicizing this has led to distrust. And those are our leaders.
So here's another contradiction that I don't know if most people recognize this, but it's in their subconscious. So when hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and other things came along, one of the objections to it was that there weren't many peer-reviewed studies for a number of years that showed that they were effective against COVID. Of course, they couldn't be because COVID was new. Well, there haven't been. This vaccine's been around less than a year.
You're right.
Is that right? Less than a year.
Right. Yeah. It was around January.
Yeah,
right?
less than
December,
a year.
January.
There haven't been any long-term studies. They can't be.
No, there
So
are.
now how dangerous is that?
It's of concern.
Well, I mean, it was like massive danger when they wanted to frighten people not to use hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin.
And we had
who, by the way, were medicines
years
that have been around for 50 years and never, don't kill anybody, really.
Right. And we use hydroxychloroquine off-label. So we don't just use it for malaria.
Taking hydroxychloroquine.
Right. We use it for lupus, and people have been on it for decades, and it's got a pretty good safety profile.
So why that? I mean, I'm a lawyer always, right? And to me, that contradiction just says to me there's something dishonest about this.
You know, that concerns a lot of us. Why? We keep saying, why? Why is these doctors being censored? Why is this information being censored? Why aren't we following the science? I don't know the answers.
Well, could it be money?
It's very frightening. That's come up. A lot of providers believe.
It almost always is money.
Who's new billionaires? Who's new billionaires today? People in the pharmaceutical companies.
I think the first thing I was taught in the U.S. Attorney's Office for fraud cases: follow the money.
Follow the money.
So here's follow the money.
Big lobbyists in Washington.
How many people are naturally immune in the U.S.?
About 47 million.
About 47 million. Let's say 40 million are naturally immune. And according to the studies outside the United States, which I would trust more, it is almost universal that natural immunity is much stronger than synthetic immunity.
Yeah.
Not only that, it makes sense.
Right.
It logically makes sense that it would be. If those people were exempted from the vaccine, how many billions of dollars would be deprived of the, how many billions wouldn't the pharmaceutical companies, who have no interest in money, how many billions would they lose?
Well, you could do the math.
40 million?
Yeah.
Is it possible we're giving 40 million people vaccines they don't need?
When we talk about giving it to children, they don't need it either. So it is a sick thing, very concerning that's happening. The lobbyists, they have, hey, pharmaceuticals, billion-dollar industry. They have the ear of a lot of politicians. We say we're voting in politicians who are honest, who won't do things just to get reelected.
We've been saying that for years, we haven't been doing it.
And we haven't been doing it. So it is concerning.
The word, two words that I don't think most of the American people would put together is honest and politician.
Not anymore.
Or how about reporter and honest?
I used to live in a bubble. I think that if there was,
of course, time since I've been in a bubble.
Of course, you're going to have a bad person here or there. There's good and bad in everybody. So you're going to have a politician who's corrupt. You know it, but you hope it's very few and very rare. But now that they've entered my world, it is so concerning because we deal with public health. We're dealing with patients' lives.
Yeah. I find that, I mean, having...
I'm shattered over that. I feel like I can't trust the CDC that I used to go to.
So I go back to dealing with this. You know, when I was mayor of New York, I had to deal with public health crises, a very West Nile virus, a very dramatic one. And I had never really dealt with the public health crisis of that magnitude before. And I found that my own health department was much more effective in diagnosing it than the CDC.
Wow. What year was that?
That was 1997, 98. So my own health department, with the help of some local New York doctors who had experience in Africa with West Nile virus, were quite convinced that the few cases that we had were West Nile virus. And they said, you don't have any time. They're just going to expand. So it was submitted to the CDC, and the CDC assured us that it wasn't West Nile virus. Impossible. And so I had a choice to make. I could wait until they reviewed it, or I could start to take measures, including spraying. And I just took the measures. And they were brutal. Like I was going to kill half New York City. And I was assured by my own people and everyone else that what we were spraying, first of all, couldn't kill you. And number two, would only harm you if you got behind the truck and put your nose in the exhaust, which even in New York, nobody did. And nobody died from it. We cut it down. I think we cut the number of deaths down dramatically by doing it. And then 10 days later, CDC agreed with us. So that's my experience with them. So I don't think of them as I didn't from the beginning of this. And I do think government scientists are government scientists. It's not quite as bad as China. But when I heard Fauci say, you know, why would the Chinese spread this? They wouldn't want to kill their own people. Literally fell out of my chair.
Yeah. He doesn't.
I said, this man has to be the stupidest man that ever lived. The Chinese have killed 60 million of their own people.
At least.
The best news that Xi Jinping can get is 3 million more Chinese died. He'd probably have a little dinner for that.
Celebrate.
I mean, they have no regard for human life. They're probably a country, at least in modern history, that's killed more of their own people than anyone else. So what is it? What do you say to people that are now, you know, if they don't get the vaccine, they can't go to a restaurant. If they don't get the vaccine, they can't teach. If they don't get the vaccine, they can't drive their truck. If they don't get the vaccine and they're in a business 100 more, they can't go to work. What do you say? What do you say to them?
You know, I can't tell people how to live. I can just try to give them all the facts that I know to be true and right per science. All I can say is with any respiratory illness, stay healthy. We do know people who are obese get more severe. If they get COVID, it's more severe. So keep your weight down, exercise, eat the right foods, fruits and vegetables, and take vitamin D, take vitamin C, and take
And
zinc.
how should they make the decision, vax or no vax?
I've been really staying away from that. If they're an adult to make their own decisions, I emphatically say do not give this to your child, though.
Okay. So, I mean, would it be, you make it with your doctor?
Yes, make it with your provider.
With your doctor,
Yeah,
provider,
provider.
whoever your health expert is,
Yeah.
make it
Yeah,
with
because it could
them.
be a nurse
and,
practitioner.
And as traditional in America, individuals should get to make this decision.
Yeah, don't blindly follow your doctor. I grew up starting to practice when I'd have a patient come into the emergency department and I asked what medication they're on. They didn't know. Oh, ask my doctor. Or it's the white pill. Well, what do you take it for? I don't know. My doctor told me to. That generation is gone, that blindly follow a doctor, and I'm glad. You should question every time a doctor wants to put you on anything and look it up yourself and ask to see information about it. I'll tell you a little funny thing about the CDC. Whenever you give a patient a vaccine, we, by law, a provider, are supposed to give them a sheet of what all the adverse reactions
I
are.
look at those, and everyone tells me I'm going to die.
There isn't one for the vaccines.
There's no sheet. I get one of those sheets that say, like if I get something in my stomach, it says, there's all things happen. You can get paralyzed. You can get brain dead.
Yeah. It's like, why take a medicine, right?
1% or 1% or 1% or 1% just immediately die from this medicine.
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody buys medicines on
Exactly.
television. The person comes on and says, this will be wonderful for your inflammation. It'll be great. But let me warn you, there have been people that have become paralyzed, blind, lost their arm, lost their brain, and died a terribly horrible death over 3 days of pain.
Yeah.
I don't know why anybody buys those things.
Right.
Well, that gets me into the very conclusion of this, because all of what you told me, Doctor, fits beautifully into the opinion, which I certainly recommend it to every lawyer in the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, called BST Holdings versus OSHA, in which the court, unanimous court, finds that the Biden mandate, that the likelihood is that it's going to be held to be illegal, and that it's going to be held to be unconstitutional. And let me simplify as much as I can. They really had no power to do this. In fact, at one point, I think Biden had indicated it would be unconstitutional, much like Obama did with Obamacare, but did it anyway. And then got John Roberts to agree with him. But in any event, his chief of staff indicated that they were going to do a workaround, which means they were going to do indirectly what they couldn't do directly, which turns out to be just as illegal. So the thing they base this on is a regulation of OSHA, which allows them for 6 months to pass an emergency measure without any rulemaking, without any comment, and they can just demand it. But that is only allowed in the case of grave danger, grave danger of death. And the court concludes that this is not a situation of grave danger of death. Well, that's an abuse of discretion.
Does the grave danger only hit 100 employees
or
more?
That's brilliant, because that's exactly their best argument. Their best argument is which is a very well-known standard in administrative law. These administrative agencies basically have discretion to make decisions, but they can't abuse their power. It's an abuse of power to pass a regulation that's under-inclusive and over-inclusive. So it's under-inclusive in the sense that it says only people covered are people in business of 100 more. Well, what about a 75-year-old man in a business with 75 people, and he's in contact, and he's the janitor in a prison? Well, he's not covered. But some guy who's a truck driver who never sees anybody for 4 days is covered. That's irrational, illogical, and abuse of discretion. And since this regulation covers 2/3 of the workers in America, it's also unconstitutional in that they've taken on the power of Congress to legislate. So the Fifth Circuit has declared it basically illegal. They say they don't have to reach the constitutional question because it's illegal, but it also probably is unconstitutional. So there were 24 of these cases in 12 different circuits. And the court did a very wise thing here, the judges did. They did a lottery, and they selected one circuit court to decide it. And they selected the Sixth Circuit. So they will decide whether this decision of the Fifth Circuit is correct, which I'm almost certain they will decide is correct. And then that will go to the Supreme Court. And I rarely predict decisions in the Supreme Court. Hard to see how this isn't unconstitutional and illegal. The arguments here are absolutely overwhelming. So, I think this is going to go the way of a lot of what Biden has done. It's illegal. But it's a shame because it's misled the American people and probably cost lives as a result of it, which he's done before. But thank you very much, Doctor. It was very, very informative. It's not that there's an easy, bright line test here. There's no answer like, This is one where you have to use your common sense. And in America, here's what I think all this will result in, because I think here the Supreme Court will not abandon us. It will leave it to your own wise judgment as a citizen of a democracy, not being dictated to. You know where they dictate, right? In dictatorships. In democracies, we persuade. Well, thank you very much for listening in. I hope it's been helpful. And remember, you live in the greatest country on earth because we can discuss these things in this country, and we can get court opinions like this. And this is very, very heartening to see that there is still a great, great respect in this country for the decision of the individual citizen. No. We'll see you with another edition of Rudy's Common Sense in a very short while. Thank you, and God bless America.